A stranger at the door told me I had a twin brother. It was a quiet Tuesday evening in the middle of fall, one of those rare evenings when nothing in particular seemed to be happening. I had just returned from work, tired but content with the day's events. The sun had already set, leaving a soft golden hue over the city, and I was looking forward to a night alone, away from the usual hustle of life. I lived in a small, cozy apartment in the city center, a place that felt like home after a long day of work. I had always preferred solitude, and this evening was no different. I sat down on the couch, a half-eaten Chinese takeout box beside me, my phone in hand. The TV was on, but I wasn't really paying attention to it. The sound of the background noise was comforting, like the hum of the city outside my window. I was in my own little bubble of routine, scrolling through social media, liking pictures, checking messages. It was one of those mundane nights when everything felt perfectly ordinary. Then the knock on the door came. It wasn't a knock that felt routine, no polite tap 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 or the usual knocking cadence. This one was sharp, urgent, like someone needed to speak to me immediately. The sound pierced through the calm of the evening, and for a moment I froze. A strange, almost instinctual feeling of unease washed over me. Who could it be at this hour? I wasn't expecting anyone. I got up from the couch, walking slowly toward the door, unsure of what to expect. I peeked through the peephole, trying to catch a glimpse of the visitor before opening the door. All I could see was the outline of a man, but it was hard to make out details through the small, circular lens. There was something about the figure that didn't seem to fit. He looked like an ordinary man in his late 40s, dressed casually, but his presence felt out of place. He was standing still, almost too still, as if he were waiting for me to open the door. I hesitated. Should I open it? Should I ignore him? Something told me I should, but another part of me wanted to walk away from the door entirely. But curiosity, that annoying little voice in the back of my mind, urged me forward. Slowly, I unlocked the door and opened it a crack, peering at the stranger. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice coming out a bit more tentative than I would have liked. The man didn't immediately respond. He just stared at me, his eyes searching my face, almost as though he were trying to make sure I was the right person. There was an odd tension in the air. The man had dark hair and a rugged appearance, as though he had been through a lot in his life, but his eyes were what caught me off guard. There was a depth to them, a look of someone who had seen things that couldn't be explained. "Are you Alex?" the man asked, his voice soft but with an underlying urgency. I blinked, surprised. "Yes, I am, but how do you know my name?" The stranger looked as though he were considering something for a moment before speaking again. His gaze never wavered from me, and he seemed unusually intense, as though everything he was about to say was incredibly important. "I know this is going to sound crazy," he began, his voice quieter now, almost like a whisper, "but you have a twin brother. His name is Ryan. He's alive, and you've been looking for him your whole life." The words hit me like a physical blow. I took a step back, my mind struggling to process what he had just said. A twin brother? I didn't have a twin brother. I had grown up as an only child. There was no other sibling in my family. My parents had always told me I was their only child, and I never once questioned it. The idea of a twin was absurd. "What?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. "What do you mean? This doesn't make any sense." The man took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for the next part of what he had to say. "I know this sounds insane, but I have proof," he said, pulling out a small, worn envelope from his jacket pocket. He handed it to me, and as I took it, I noticed that the envelope had my name written on it in scrawled handwriting. My heart began to race. I glanced down at the envelope, hesitating. The suddenness of everything felt like it was too much to absorb. A twin brother? Proof. I opened the envelope carefully, trying to steady my hands, my thoughts whirling in every direction. Inside, there was a single piece of paper, an old photograph. I held it up, looking closely. At first, I didn't understand. The photograph was grainy and faded, but it was clear enough to make out two young boys, probably around the age of 5 or 6, standing side by side. They looked remarkably similar, same hair, same eyes, same face, but there was something haunting about the way they were positioned. The boy next to the one who resembled me was smiling broadly, while the boy who resembled me had a look of uncertainty on his face. They were standing together, but there was a noticeable distance between them, a gap that seemed to speak of something unspoken. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who is this?" I whispered. The man was watching me closely, as though gauging my reaction. "That's you and Ryan. Your mother and father, they didn't know what to do. Ryan was taken from you when you were both young, but he's alive. He's been looking for you, and I've been helping him." He paused for a moment. "I know this is a lot to take in, but you need to understand that Ryan needs you. He's been trying to find you for years, and I can help you both find each other again." I felt as if the ground beneath me had shifted. It was like everything I had known about my past, the life I had built for myself, had been a lie. A twin brother, taken from me? How had I never known about this? How had I lived all these years thinking I was alone when someone else shared my blood? I looked up at the man, feeling a sense of disbelief. But why are you telling me this now? Why haven't I heard about this before? The stranger shifted his weight, his expression darkening. Because Ryan, been in danger. There's been something going on, something that's been following him for years. He's not safe, and neither are you if you don't find him soon. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The room suddenly seemed smaller, the walls closing in around me. Everything was happening so fast and I couldn't keep up. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of the man's words, but all I could feel was confusion and fear. A twin brother, danger. I had no idea what to believe anymore. I'm not sure what you want me to do, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I don't even know you. How can I trust you? The man nodded, as if he had expected that question. I understand, but the truth is, you don't have much time. Ryan's been looking for you for a long time, and if you don't act fast, you might lose him forever. I can give you the information you need to find him. But you have to be ready. It won't be easy and it won't be safe. I stood there frozen, holding the photograph in my hands. My world was unraveling and nothing felt real anymore. This couldn't be happening, could it? The man looked at me one last time, his face filled with a strange mixture of urgency and regret. I know it's hard to believe, he said softly, but I'm not lying. Ryan's out there, and he's waiting for you. If you want to find him, you have to decide now. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the photograph of two boys who looked so much like me, yet felt like strangers. And in that moment, I had to decide. Was I going to walk away, pretend none of this ever happened, or was I going to take the leap into the unknown, into a past that had been hidden from me for my entire life? I stood frozen in the doorway, the photograph still clutched tightly in my hand. My mind was racing, but no matter how fast I tried to process everything, it all felt like it was happening to someone else. This wasn't my life. It couldn't be. How could I have spent 28 years believing I was an only child, only to find out that I had a twin brother, someone who had been taken from me? The man in front of me was watching me closely, but there was no expectation in his eyes. There was just a quiet urgency, as though he was waiting for me to make up my mind. I looked at him, struggling to understand what had just happened. Was I dreaming? Was this some cruel joke? I had never been one to entertain conspiracy theories or wild stories, but something about his demeanor, the way he spoke, made me think there was more to it than just madness. Finally, I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the silence fill the space between us. I needed a moment to breathe, to process. The weight of the situation was sinking in, and I had no idea what to do with it. Look, I said, my voice quieter now. I don't know who you are, and I don't know why you're telling me this, but I need some answers. How do you know all of this? Why haven't I heard anything about Ryan before? The man took a step forward, his face serious. I get that this is a lot to take in, but I've been working with Ryan for years now, trying to find you both. The truth is, your parents didn't want anyone to know about Ryan. He was taken from you when you were both Bobbies, and they didn't want anyone to ask questions. There are people involved in this who don't want either of you to know the truth, but I've been trying to help him find you. He's been looking for you for years, and the time to find him is now. I shook my head, still struggling to wrap my mind around what he was saying. Wait, you're telling me that my parents, that they knew about this and never told me, and now you're saying there are people who don't want me to find him? The stranger nodded. That's right. Ryan was taken from you when you were both just infants. Your parents had no choice in the matter, but they've kept it a secret, and for years Ryan's been searching for you. It hasn't been easy for him. There are people who want to keep you two apart, who want to keep the truth buried, but Ryan's out there. I've seen the things they've done to him. He's been in danger for a long time. I felt a cold shiver run through me. My brain was telling me this was impossible. It couldn't be true. And yet, a small part of me, deep down, felt like something inside me knew this story wasn't just made up. There was a gnawing feeling in my gut that something had been off all these years, a sense that I had been missing something important, like a puzzle with a piece just out of reach. How do you know all of this? I asked again, my voice almost a whisper. Why are you involved? Who are you? The man paused for a moment, then took a step back inside. My name is David, he said, as if he were finally ready to explain. I've been tracking Ryan for a long time. When he was taken, he was placed into a different life, a different family. The people who took him had their own reasons for wanting him, but he's been trying to find you ever since. I've been helping him, but we've been running out of time. I can't keep this up forever, and the people who have been hunting him, they won't stop until they get what they want. I didn't understand. My mind couldn't process all of it, couldn't connect the dots. My whole life, I had been one person with a specific set of memories, and now, this stranger was standing in my living room, telling me that everything was a lie. I had a twin. Someone out there who shared my blood, my genes, my life in a way I had never known, and someone was trying to keep us apart. I don't even know where to begin, I muttered, more to myself than to David. This is insane. Are you saying that someone's been looking for me all this time, and I've never known? David looked at me with sympathy, as though he understood just how impossible this must have seemed. It's hard to believe, I know, but Ryan has been searching for you. You've both been searching for each other in a way. But the truth is, there are people who don't want you to find him. They've been hiding him, keeping him away from you. The room felt colder now, the weight of his words sinking in. I glanced down at the photograph again. The two boys, so alike in appearance, seemed to be mocking me, their smiling faces a reminder of everything I had lost. My twin brother, someone I never knew I had, was out there somewhere and I didn't know where to start. But David was right. I had to make a decision. I couldn't just walk away. This was too important. If there was a chance to find Ryan, to finally meet him after all these years, I couldn't ignore it. Okay, I said, my voice steadying though my heart was pounding in my chest. What do I need to do? How do I find him? David nodded, his face serious once again. First, we need to be careful. The people who have been watching Ryan, they've been keeping tabs on his every move. They know he's close to finding you, so you can't just go searching on your own. I can help you, but you have to trust me. We have to move quickly. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. This was happening. I had no idea what kind of danger lay ahead or what secrets my parents had been hiding, but I knew one thing. I couldn't let fear stop me from finding my brother. I had to do this. For him. For me. David reached into his jacket again and pulled out a small piece of paper, handing it to me. This is the address where Ryan been staying. It's a safe house for now, but it won't stay that way for long. You need to meet him there. I looked at the address written on the paper. It was a small, out-of-the-way place, far from the city center. It felt like the start of something big, something that would change everything. But I didn't know if I was ready for it. What would Ryan be like? Would we even get along? How could I just walk into his life after all this time and expect things to be normal? But there was no turning back now. I had a twin brother out there and he was waiting for me. Whatever danger lay ahead, whatever answers I would find, I couldn't ignore it any longer. Let's do it, I said, feeling a sense of determination settle into my chest. I'll meet him. David gave me a slight nod of approval. Good, then we leave now. I took one last look around my apartment, as if to say goodbye to the life I had known. From here on out, nothing would ever be the same. The car ride was quiet. David didn't say much and I didn't know what to ask. My head was spinning. I had barely had time to process the fact that I had a twin brother, let alone wrap my mind around the idea that someone unknown, someone dangerous, had been keeping us apart for most of our lives. I couldn't stop staring at the address in my hand, the destination that seemed like it was from another life. What would I find there? Who was Ryan? Was he anything like me? Would we even get along? David drove in silence, his eyes focused on the road ahead. The streets blurred as we passed, and I noticed that we were moving farther away from the city center, deeper into unfamiliar territory. The lights grew dimmer, the buildings began to thin out, and the street signs changed. I hadn't paid attention to where we were going, and now I was beginning to feel a sense of unease. It wasn't just the darkness that was creeping in, it was the overwhelming unknown of everything that was happening. I was heading towards something that felt both thrilling and terrifying, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about meeting my brother anymore. There was something much bigger at play. David glanced over at me, sensing the tension. You're probably wondering what kind of life Ryan's had, he said, his voice breaking the silence. The truth is, it's been hard, really hard. They didn't just take him, they changed everything about who he was. He's been isolated, manipulated, and controlled for most of his life. The people who took him didn't want him to know the truth about you. They wanted to keep him in the dark, keep him from ever finding you. But Ryan's different. He's strong. He's been looking for you for years, and he's not the same person they thought they could control. I let his words sink in. What do you mean they controlled him? I asked, my voice quiet, barely above a whisper. What kind of people are we talking about here? David's expression hardened and I saw the flicker of something dark in his eyes. The kind of people who don't care about family, about love. They see people like Ryan as assets, not humans. They use them, exploit them, manipulate them for whatever their agenda is. But Ryan's always known something was off. That's why he's been trying to find you. He doesn't want to be their pawn anymore. A chill ran down my spine. I had no idea who these people were or what they wanted with my brother, but I could feel that there was danger surrounding everything. And now, here I was, about to meet a person I had never known, a person who had been living a completely different life, a life that I had no clue about. My mind raced with questions. What if he didn't like me? What if he was angry that I had been living a normal life while he had been trapped somewhere, far from everything he should have known? David pulled up to a small, run-down building at the edge of a nondescript street, the headlights of the car briefly illuminating the faded exterior. The building looked old, a little eerie, with a few broken windows and peeling paint. I felt my stomach knot, but I forced myself to take a deep breath. This was it. This was where Ryan had been staying, and whether I was ready or not, it was time to meet him. "We're here," David said softly, his eyes flickering toward the building. He turned off the engine, and the silence settled around us like a heavy fog. I looked at the address on the paper again, then back at the building. It didn't feel like a place where someone should be living, especially not someone who was supposed to be my twin brother. It felt wrong, like a secret that had been hidden in plain sight for far too long. I reached for the door handle, my hands trembling slightly, but I couldn't quite make myself open it. "You ready?" David asked, glancing at me with a calm but reassuring look. "I don't know," I muttered. "I don't even know what to expect. What if it's all wrong? What if he doesn't want to meet me?" David's gaze softened. "You're not going to know unless you go in. He's been waiting for this moment for a long time. He's not going to turn you away. He needs you." With a deep breath, I nodded, finally opening the car door and stepping out onto the cold pavement. The night air hit me with an unexpected chill, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly out of my depth. I wasn't just meeting a new person. I was meeting a part of myself that I had never known, a part that had been missing for as long as I could remember. I didn't know what the future held, but I couldn't back out now. I had to see this through. David led the way, his steps steady and sure as he walked toward the building's entrance. I followed closely behind, my feet feeling heavy as I walked. The sound of our footsteps echoed in the quiet street, and for a moment, it felt like the world had stopped around us. I was acutely aware of every breath I took, every thought that flickered through my mind. What if Ryan didn't want me to be part of his life? What if he hated me for not knowing about him? But then again, who could blame him? What if I had been in his shoes, my entire life uprooted, my family taken from me without explanation? What would I have felt if someone, out of nowhere, showed up and told me I had a twin brother I never knew about? My mind raced with endless possibilities, but no answers. When we reached the door, David stopped and turned to me. "Listen, Ryan, been through a lot. He might be cautious, maybe even angry, but don't take it personally. Just give him time. And remember, this is a big moment for both of you." I nodded, though my heart was pounding in my chest. David knocked on the door, and there was a moment of silence before a muffled voice called out from the other side. "Who is it?" the voice asked, low and cautious. "It's me," David replied, his tone calm but firm. "And I've brought someone who wants to meet you." I could feel the tension building in my chest, the anticipation almost unbearable. The door creaked open slowly, and I couldn't help but feel every fiber of my being on high alert. As the door inched open, I saw him. Ryan. He was standing there, not much taller than me, with shaggy dark hair and a face that looked almost exactly like mine. It was like staring into a mirror. But there was something about his expression that set him apart from me. His eyes, though familiar, were guarded, careful. They flickered over me, studying me as if trying to figure out who I was. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. It was as if time itself had stopped, and in that silence, I realized just how much we both had been missing. I didn't know what to say, what to do. So many questions were swirling in my head, but I couldn't find the words. Finally, Ryan spoke, his voice hesitant. "So, you're really here?" He looked me up and down, his expression still unreadable. "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time, but I didn't think it would feel like this." I swallowed hard, feeling my own voice crack as I answered, "Yeah. I didn't know, I never knew, but now I'm here, and I want to get to know you." Ryan's eyes softened just a fraction. The walls that had been around him seemed to falter for a moment. "I've been looking for you," he said quietly. "I've been looking for you my whole life." And in that moment, everything seemed to fall into place. The weight of everything, the confusion, the uncertainty, didn't seem so heavy anymore. I wasn't alone. I had someone. I had a twin. And now I was standing in front of him. The silence between Ryan and me was thick, and it felt like every second stretched on forever. His gaze was steady, but there was something in his eyes that hinted at years of longing, pain, and confusion. I had so many questions, but for a moment I couldn't find the words. My throat felt tight, as if the weight of everything we'd missed was pressing down on me. I wanted to reach out to close the gap between us, but I had no idea where to begin. Ryan shifted on his feet, breaking the silence. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said quietly, his voice rough, like he hadn't spoken much in a long time. "I know this is a lot to take in." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. I needed a moment to breathe, to process everything that had happened. My whole life I had been one person, an only child living a life that seemed normal, steady, and predictable. And now everything felt up in the air. I had a twin brother, someone who had been taken from me when we were bobbies, someone who had lived a life I couldn't even imagine. And yet, standing in front of me, Ryan didn't seem like a stranger. There was an eerie familiarity in his eyes, in his features. It was like meeting someone who shared my soul. David, who had been standing silently off to the side, spoke up. "Maybe it's best if we sit down and talk. There's a lot you need to know." Ryan hesitated, glancing back at David before stepping back and opening the door wider. "Come in," he said, his voice softer now. "I don't have much, but it's the only place I've got." The inside of Ryan's apartment was sparse and utilitarian. It didn't look like much, but there was a quiet, almost resigned comfort to it. The walls were bare except for a few faded posters, and the furniture was mismatched but functional. It was clear that Ryan had never been given much, but somehow he had made it work. It struck me how different our lives had been. While I had grown up in a comfortable middle-class home, surrounded by family, friends, and opportunities, Ryan had lived in the shadows, hiding from the world, never truly knowing his origins. We sat down around a small, worn table in the corner of the room, and Ryan finally broke the silence. "I guess I should start at the beginning," he said, his voice low. "You deserve to know the truth, even if it's not an easy one." I leaned forward, my hands clenched together. I wanted to hear it, needed to hear it, but part of me was scared to know what I was about to learn. What had happened to him? What had been kept from me all these years? Ryan took a deep breath, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. "When we were born," he began, "our parents didn't know what was going to happen. We were twins, but we were born under circumstances that made things complicated. There were people in our lives, people who didn't care about us as kids, who saw us as assets." He paused, his voice growing thicker. "They took me away. I didn't know why at the time, but they told me my parents couldn't keep me. They told me they were protecting me, that it was better for me to be with them. But that was all a lie." I sat there completely stunned. "You were taken," I whispered, but why didn't they tell me? Why didn't they tell me you existed?" Ryan shook his head slowly, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Because they didn't want you to know. They didn't want either of us to know the truth. Your parents, they didn't have a choice. They were forced into silence. And the people who took me, they did everything to make sure I wouldn't remember. They erased my past, erased you from my memory." I could hardly breathe. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of all the years that had been stolen from both of us. I had spent my life thinking I was alone, that I had no family but my parents. And now I was hearing that not only had I had a twin brother, but that he had been ripped away from me, hidden from me. How could this have happened? How could my parents have kept this secret? "Who were these people?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Ryan looked away as if he wasn't sure how much he wanted to say. "They were part of a larger group, a network that specializes in, let's just say, taking children for specific purposes. They weren't interested in us as people, just as tools. I don't know much about them, but what I do know is that they were very good at covering their tracks. They made sure I had no memory of you, no memory of my real life." I could feel the rage building inside me. "So they just took you," I repeated, my voice shaking. "And you didn't even know you had a family?" Ryan nodded, his eyes filled with a quiet pain. "For years I didn't know who I was. I was told I was abandoned, that my parents didn't want me. And I believed it because that's all I was ever told. But deep down, something always felt wrong. I always knew there was something more to the story. When I was older, I started looking into my past. I began a search for my real family, for the truth." He paused, his expression darkening. "That's when things started getting dangerous. The people who took me, they didn't want me finding you. They didn't want either of us to be together. They've been watching me, and I'm sure they're watching you now." The room seemed to shrink as the full weight of what Ryan was saying hit me. This wasn't just about two lost brothers reconnecting. It was about a dark, dangerous network that had been controlling our lives from the very beginning. I had no idea what they wanted or why they kept Ryan from me, but now I understood just how deeply this went. Ryan's life had been a shadow, a carefully constructed lie, and I had been living a lie too, thinking I was the only one. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice strained. "How did you even know where to look?" Ryan gave a small, bitter smile. "I didn't know at first. It took years, but eventually I found a clue. A slip-up, really. One of the people who was involved in taking me left a trail, a hint that led me to a private investigator. From there, I started piecing things together. But the more I dug, the more dangerous it became. They don't want us to find each other. They'll do whatever it takes to stop us. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. The truth about my family was unraveling in a way I had never expected. There were forces at play here that I couldn't even comprehend, and now I was involved too. "We need to be careful," David spoke up from the side, his voice calm but firm. "These people have a lot of power. They don't want you to reconnect with Ryan, Alex. If you want to stay safe, and if you want Ryan to stay safe, then you both need to be careful about what you do next." I glanced at Ryan, my heart heavy with the realization that everything I thought I knew about my life had been a lie. But even as the weight of that hit me, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't walk away from this. Ryan was my family, and no matter how dangerous it was, I had to help him. We had been separated for too long, and I wasn't about to let whatever forces had kept us apart tear us down again. "Then what do we do?" I asked, my voice steady now. "How do we find them? How do we stop them?" Ryan's gaze hardened, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that was both fierce and determined. "We go after them. We find out who they are, and we make sure they never take anyone else again. We'll do it together." I nodded. I didn't know where this road would take us, but for the first time since I met Ryan, I knew we were no longer strangers. We were brothers, and whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it with him. The days after I met Ryan were a blur, filled with a mix of emotions, revelations, and preparations. As the reality of everything began to settle in, I found myself grappling with the magnitude of what I had learned. There was so much to process: our separation, the secrets that had been kept from me, and the very real dangers that still loomed over both of us. But through it all, one truth remained: Ryan and I were family. And no matter how dark or dangerous the path ahead might be, we would face it together. David, who had been helping Ryan track me down, continued to offer guidance. He had known about the dangers surrounding Ryan for years, but he was determined to help us navigate the treacherous waters ahead. The people who had taken Ryan, those responsible for the separation, weren't just going to let us reunite without a fight. The more we learned about them, the more we realized just how far their reach went. They were a shadowy network, hidden in plain sight, manipulating lives and controlling people for their own purposes. Their goal was to maintain control over Ryan and anyone else they saw as valuable assets. But now that Ryan and I had found each other, there was no going back. Our first step was simple: gather information. Ryan and I both knew that we couldn't act impulsively, but the urgency of the situation pushed us forward. The more we uncovered, the more we realized just how deep the network ran. People were involved at all levels, from high-ranking officials to people we would have never suspected. It felt like a never-ending web, and the deeper we went, the more dangerous it became. But no matter how perilous things got, I couldn't walk away now. I couldn't let this organization control Ryan's life any longer. We spent days going over every piece of information we could find. We met with people who might know more about the network, cautiously reaching out to former allies of Ryan, people who had been involved in his search. Each conversation brought us closer to the truth, but it also made things more real. The people who had taken Ryan were dangerous, and the more we uncovered about their methods, the more we realized just how far-reaching their influence was. One night, after hours of going over notes and trying to piece together clues, Ryan and I sat together, exhausted but determined. David had gone to meet someone who could provide us with more concrete details, and we were left alone in the small apartment. The tension between us had lessened slightly since that first night, but I could still feel the weight of everything hanging over us. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you hadn't been taken?" I asked, my voice quiet in the stillness of the room. I hadn't asked him this before, but I needed to know. What had Ryan experienced all these years? What had I missed? Ryan glanced at me, his expression unreadable for a moment. "I think about it all the time. What my life would have been like if I had grown up with you, with my real family. I don't know if I'll ever stop wondering, but the truth is I've had to build my own life, even if it wasn't the one I imagined." His voice softened, and for the first time I saw the weight of the years he had spent in isolation. "I never gave up on the idea of finding you, Alex. I couldn't. You're my brother. Even when they made me forget, even when they manipulated me. Something inside me always knew I had a family out there, and now I finally know why." I felt a lump form in my throat. All these years I had no idea. I had been living my life, thinking I was alone, when in reality I had a brother, someone who had been fighting for us both, someone who had never stopped looking for me. Ryan stood up and walked over to the window, looking out into the city. "But I've always known there was something bigger going on. It wasn't just about me. It was about control. The people who took me, they wanted to control me, control my life. They didn't want us to know the truth. And now, they'll stop at nothing to make sure we're never together again." I joined him by the window, my eyes on the street below. The city was quiet, but there was a sense of unease in the air, a feeling that the calm was only temporary. "What happens now?" I asked. "Where do we go from here?" Ryan turned to face me, his eyes sharp, determined. "We find them, we take them down. We don't let them keep running our lives, and we don't stop until we're free." It was the first time I had seen Ryan this resolute. He wasn't the scared, confused kid who had been taken away all those years ago. He was a man who had spent his life trying to find answers, trying to make sense of a world that had stolen so much from him. And now, with me by his side, he wasn't going to let anything stand in our way. David returned later that night, his expression tense. He had information that could help us, but it came with a warning. The network was aware of our search. They had been tracking us for a while, and we had to be careful. If we wanted to bring them down, we had to be prepared for anything. The fight ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was one we had to fight. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of action. We moved quickly, contacting people who could help us, gathering more intel on the organization, and preparing ourselves for the inevitable confrontation. But with every step, the danger grew. We were being watched, and it was clear that the people who had kept Ryan and me apart for so long wouldn't let us go easily. One night, after a particularly intense meeting with a contact, Ryan and I were alone in the apartment again. It was late, and the exhaustion from the constant tension and planning was starting to weigh on me. I sat on the couch, running my hands through my hair, trying to push through the fatigue. Ryan was packing, his mind clearly working through the next steps. "We're getting closer," Ryan said, more to himself than to me. "I can feel it. They won't be able to hide for much longer." I nodded, but something in his words made me uneasy. I didn't want to lose him again, not after everything we had been through. "Are you sure about this?" I asked. "Are we ready?" Ryan stopped packing and looked at me, his eyes intense. "We have to be. This is bigger than just us. We're not just fighting for our own freedom anymore. We're fighting for everyone they've hurt." I swallowed hard. I knew he was right. This wasn't just about reuniting with my brother anymore. It was about stopping something much larger, something that had affected countless lives. But the reality of what lay ahead, the danger, the risks, the fight we were about to face, was starting to settle in. I had never imagined my life would lead me to this point. I had never imagined that the family I had spent my whole life searching for was buried in secrets and lies. But now that I knew the truth, there was no turning back. This was the fight of our lives, and it wasn't just Ryan's fight. It was mine, too. We spent the following days in preparation, gathering every last piece of information we could, making sure we were ready for what was coming. The people who had taken Ryan weren't just going to let us walk away, and we knew that. But we weren't afraid anymore. We had each other, and that was all that mattered. The day finally came when we were ready to make our move. David helped us secure a plan, and we set everything in motion. We knew we had to act fast. The longer we waited, the more dangerous it would become. The tension in the air was palpable as we approached the final confrontation, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us. The building we had tracked down was their headquarters, hidden in plain sight, disguised as an ordinary business. But we knew what lay beneath the surface. We knew the truth, and we were ready to face it head on. Ryan and I stood side by side, knowing that whatever happened next, we would be facing it together. The people who had kept us apart, who had controlled our lives for so long, were about to find out that we were no longer their pawns. We were brothers, and we weren't going to let them keep us in the dark any longer.